accelerated dragon as the main weapon for black against the e4. It's interesting that I've been playing it constantly myself, and this opening is not used by black too often on a highest level, although some very strong world's best players, they do play it, but it's not too often. Therefore, there are not too many articles and analysis about it published in the magazines. So, but every time I play, there is something new comes up very frequently. Not every time, but very frequently, something new is used against me by relatively good players, and I had to deal with it. Most of the ideas they use are not so good, but some of them, one out of every 2 or 3 ideas, are interesting, and I had to deal with it. And I want to share with you what is that they been finding for white and how we have to deal it against it for black. d4, cd, knight takes d4, knight c6, and I'm talking about knight c3 variation, not in Moroz's bind. Knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3, knight f6, and of course I want to talk about the main variation, main move, bishop c4. We play queen a5 and move. The idea I want to talk about is knight b3, but knight b3 not in this position. Knight b3 after castling knight b3, because for those you may not know, knight b3 immediately is a really bad move, because now we can go queen to b4 and bishop is hanging on d3. Protecting with queen d3 is losing a piece, and if black plays bishop d3, if white plays bishop d3, then they simply lose a pawn. Knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, bishop takes c3 check, pawn takes, queen takes e4. Black simply has extra pawn with no compensation. Well, this is all known, and that's not the novelty I wanted to talk about, obviously. Castle. Well, in knight b3, it's not a new move, but I want to introduce you a new approach, new way of dealing against it. So we have to go queen c7, and only move here that will make any sense is bishop g5. Well, bishop e2 was tried, and then we go b6. Now I'm going to show you interesting position. After f4, bishop b7, e5, knight e8, knight d5, queen d8. It looks like black is going backwards, and looks like white has very active position, but in reality, if you take very close look, black has an advantage in this position. Reason why? Because there is no way that white can stop black's move d7, d6, after which they will be forced to take on d6. Black knight is gonna take on d6, and black is gonna have very well coordinated pieces. Knight is gonna go to f5, rook to c8, and you can play with this position. I assure you, black is gonna have an advantage, not to mentioning the b2 pawn is hanging. So, and again, that's not what we want to discuss here. Well, this is just in case white goes bishop e2, then simply go b6 and bishop b7. But the main move in our concern in this position is move bishop to g5. a6 is, after careful analysis, I came to conclusion that a6 is the move. Well, the idea of move bishop g5 in case black goes d6, which is also, by the way, is not bad move, because if black takes on f6, we are not gonna take with the bishop because knight d5 followed by knight takes f6. What we're gonna do, we're gonna take with the pawn, but then knight b5 and pawn is hanging on d6, and it's not clear what's going to happen after queen b6. Black is going to have some compensation, but we don't want to get into this analysis because that's not how we're going to play. Move I recommend is a6, and here white has a choice to play a4 to stop black's b5 move, or to go forward and play bishop takes f6 followed by knight d5. Move knight d5 right away does not promise any advantage to white, because of simply knight takes d5, pawn takes d5, and knight e5. And now bishop is hanging, bishop takes e7 loses simply after rook e8, and white has two bishops hanging. So knight d5 is not a good move here. But what would happen after bishop takes f6? Bishop takes f6 and knight d5. Now white has absolutely no advantage here. Queen e5, and the best move here is knight takes f6, queen takes f6 and c3. But then after d6, black obviously has no problem at all. Now, just to help you understand this particular position, why those exchanges were good. Anytime good for black. Anytime you have some space disadvantage, it's okay to, and in this case, in accelerated dragon, black almost always has space disadvantage. It's good to exchange some minor pieces, and that's what we did. Now, if white tries to do something more, like f4, that's ambitious move. Taking on b2 is a little dangerous, and we are not going to do that. So if we're not going to do that, we don't really have to discuss it. We play queen takes to e4. And this is good for black, because after knight takes f6, pawn takes f6. We know black has a raggedy pawn structure, but they have an extra pawn, and bishop eventually will be developed. I don't know what white has. White has probably nothing. On bishop d5, for example, we can go queen check followed by rook e8. We don't want white to play rook e1. Actually, if they play rook e1 in this case, we can exchange everything. And in this position, we can simply go king f8 or maybe even knight b4. On rook check, we can go king g7. This position is okay for black. On bishop e4, we could go f5, and bishop d3, maybe b6, followed by bishop b7. Well, but quieter way and safer way maybe to play here, simply king f8. White has absolutely no advantage. It may be the other way around. So what we said now, this is not danger as I just showed it to you, but what happens if white goes a4? In this position, when we just played a6, what if they go a4? Now, if they go a4, I would recommend knight b4 move. Now, knight b4 stops forever bishop takes f6 and knight d5 as a threat, because it's not a threat anymore. We can always recapture. Also, we attacking the c4 bishop. Knight is very well posted on b4 after bishop e2. We can simply go b6, bishop b7, or d6 and bishop e6. Black has absolutely no problems here. Now, going back again, this is one idea in main variation. Now, another problem you may face in accelerated Draken, in the move order on knight f3, I recommend, and I play myself, is g6 second move and not knight c6. Let me tell you the difference between these two moves. Most of the time, it makes no difference and it transposes. But there are some additional options we provide white if we go g6 or not, depending on which move we're going to make. Knight c6 allows bishop b5 variation, which is a big chapter in Sicilian today. There are a lot of games, a lot of various developments, and we are trying to avoid, and we play g6. But we did avoid bishop b5 variation, but we allowed a couple of other options. For instance, c3 and d4. And we also allowed an option d4 right away, cd, and queen takes d4. And this is one of the things one of the variations I wanted to discuss with you. Now, after queen takes d4, we're going to go knight f6. And we want to go knight c6 next move and gain some tempos on early developed queen. So the moves are here: bishop b5. All this already mentioned on a main accelerated Draken DVD. Bishop b5 and e5. I don't know of any other moves because there is no other move that would make any sense in this position. Because if white doesn't do that, and after knight c6 they have to go back with the queen, and it's just total waste of time. On bishop b5, we go a6, and we guaranteed to have a good position. I'm going to quickly run through this, what is happening after a6. If white goes bishop a4, then we go b5 followed by knight c6, and we're doing great. But if white goes e5, then we play pawn takes b5, pawn takes f6, knight c6. Most logical move, either queen b3 here to play, or f takes e, attacking our queen. On queen to e3 or f takes e, in both variations, the key move for black here is the b4 move. Let me tell you what I mean by that. On queen e3, I want to play b4. We play b4 because we have to control c3 square. We don't want knight to be main player in this middle game position. We play b4, and after castling, we go e6, and now you see that f6 is a big weakness, and it has bad position. gonna lose a pawn. So the main continuation here is f takes e. Queen takes e7, check, and queen e3. Actually, if white played here queen e3, and we play b4, and now white plays f takes e, we would have had a 100% transposition, identical position, castles, and now we have to exchange queens. You don't want to play this position with queens on the board. Bishop takes and bishop g7. This is very good position for black. I would say black has clear advantage, because after c3, they have to play c3. Important to notice that we don't take. We almost never take on c3. We go d5, followed by castling. Or you can castle first. Let me tell you the difference. On d5, white may stop us from castling, but we're going to go bishop e6, and we're doing okay anyway. Or if we castle instead, white may try to go bishop c5. Then we go rook e8, and after bishop d6, rook e6, we are doing also fine. So I would say it does not make much difference what move you play. d5, knight d4, and we castle. It's interesting that if white plays a3 here, it looks like we have to do something with a b pawn. No, we don't. B pawn is untouchable. If white wants to take on c6, we take back. So if white wants to take on b4, they have to take with the c pawn. And you can tell black has pair of very active bishops, and black is doing fine. Actually, all this is covered on the main DVD of Accelerated Dragon. But what is new here? Now, so white's been working and trying to improve some plays, some variations, and get some advantage. And here, what some good players came up with. And now it's like a main weapon for white against this move order in Accelerated Dragon. They go e5. We go knight c6, obviously. And now white can go with the queen to f4 or c4, actually queen to f4 or queen to a4. It doesn't make any difference. It's all the same. The reason why it's the same, because when we go knight d5, queen ends up going to e4. So it could have come from f4, and it could came from e4, a4. Well, just quick notice, I point you that queen h4 is not good, because to play after knight d5, bishop h6, this is bad variation for white, because on queen h4 simply knight takes e5, winning a pawn. And black is going to have extra pawn after taking the knight. So this is out of question. So what I would do here, what we should do, we should go to a4, knight d5, and queen e4. Now, I believe previously I was recommending knight d to b4 move, because now if white goes a3, we go d5, and we have good position. That's true. If white goes c3 and we go d5, it's also good position, because ed is always bad because of bishop f5. But now I have second thoughts, and I don't like knight b4 move as much. That's the change. That's the difference now. Because on knight to b4, white will play bishop b5. The only idea playing knight to b4 is to go d5. But now we cannot go d5 because queen is going to take on b4 and we're going to lose a piece. So, and if we go a6, then white may go bishop a4 and after b5, bishop b3. And if we go d5 now and white goes back, we have very badly placed knight on b4, which is in danger of being trapped. And I don't particularly like this position at all. So what we do is this. What we do is this. Instead of going knight to b4, there are other moves. Knight c7, there is move e6, but of course, my mission is not to tell you how many moves we have, but to pick one for you. And my choice is knight b6. After knight b6, what we need to do, we need to quickly develop and get the counterplay in the center. That's what we have to do. Now, white's most common move and most ambitious move, knowing that black wants to go d6 or d5, to go bishop f4. But then we can play here. That's where you have an option. You have a flexibility. You go bishop g7 or d5. Now, d5 is a pawn sacrifice. E takes d, and we cannot recapture, you see. And now bishop g7. Very interesting position. D takes e, queen takes e7. We're going to be pawned down, and we're going to have development as a compensation. Or, which may be even better, to postpone d5 move. d5 or d6 has to be played. We cannot play this position without playing d6 or d5. But we may go bishop g7 first. Knight c3. Now we can go d5. And after ed, now we can castle. Or maybe even go bishop f5. So we castled. Now when white takes, we take on e7. And when white takes on e7, we take the knight first. And this position is actually interesting. It's almost equal. We are a pawn down. White has two bishops. However, after bishop e6, knight on d5, and weakness on double c pawn will give black sufficient counterplay. And please notice that weakness of dark squares such as h6 in a king area, g7, h6, and f6 is not as significant since queens are off the board. This position, I guarantee you, is very, very safe for black. So that's another thing. Well, this is considered today as the most dangerous continuation for black if white plays this way. e4, c5, knight, f3, g6. And because of this variation that I just presented you, why black a lot of time tries to avoid to play g6, and they go through knight c6, allowing different options. But I'm trying to prove that g6, d4, c takes d, knight takes d4 is perfectly safe for black. Knight c3, bishop g7, this is one main variation. Or if white plays queen d4, knight f6, and where we just went e5, knight c6, that's the danger. Queen a4, knight d5, queen e4, go knight b6. And remember, do not play this position without d6 and d5 early. For example, what can happen? What is the common mistake you may expect from black, made by black from unexperienced player? Bishop g7, no, it's white's move, bishop f4, bishop g7, knight c3. Now you must go d5 or d6. d5. d5 is better move than d6 because it's more forceful. Because if queen goes back, then bishop g4 will create a lot of problems for e5 pawn. You must go d5 now. Let me show you just one brief example. When we play immediate d5, white takes, we castle, and if black castles. This is okay for black, because what can black do here? Black can simply capture, rook takes, and we can go even queen e8 in this position. But before you capture on d6 in this position, what will be okay is to capture the bishop, the knight. Pawn takes, pawn takes. This position is okay for black, and you just have to keep up with our upgrades on accelerated Draken, and there is a lot more, because as I already mentioned, theory is like a novelty, it's like news. It keeps getting updated. When black found something good, some good positions and variation, white tries to improve. And white improves and finds something new. Now it's black's turn. And it's like a ball game. It goes, we have initiative, then opponent has initiative. And this is like continued, ongoing discussion, and it will never end. That's the way chess theory and opening theory works. Since there are no major developments and changes in accelerated Draken, what we want to do is go through the most critical positions, and actually in this case I pick the positions by the number of the questions I get from customers and from readers about various different positions that they had in the game, and they encounter a certain problem and they ask for help. Here are several of them, of the critical positions. e4, c5, knight f3, g6, d4, cd, knight takes d4, knight c6, knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3, knight f6, and f3. So we said we don't recommend this move because of with castle, and on bishop c4 we go queen b6. But this move, according to theory and according to even our tape, gives black okay and a playable position, no advantage, and some people were unhappy with this position. And here is the position I am referring to. Bishop b3, knight takes e4, knight d5. This is all theory. Queen a5, check, c3. Now here we had practically two choices, and which we were mentioning. We're going knight c5 or knight f6, probably knight f6, and after knight c6, knight takes c6. I mean, here also we had two choices, b takes c and d takes c. I think in both cases black is approximately equal, although some people don't like to play this position because white has two bishops. Well, two bishops are not significant here, and this is okay to play for black. But why are we looking about this position? Because I want to introduce a different idea, which actually myself I like better. So here is this. Queen b6, bishop b3, knight takes e4, knight takes d5. I have a reputation of not being a real pawn hunter and winning a pawn for any cost and then defend bad position. No, but certain positions I would defend for an extra pawn, and this is one of them. I go queen a5, check c3, and instead of going knight f6 back, I would go bishop takes d4. And after bishop takes d4, well, obviously I cannot take on d4 because there will be knight takes e7 check. So I am simply gonna play knight to c5. Okay, now I have an extra pawn. That's the extra pawn I was talking about. White is gonna castle, and we still cannot take on d4 because knight takes e7. And we will go now simply in this position, knight to e6. No question, white has some initiative. And also there is no question that black has some dark square problems on the king side. I like initiative myself, but I wouldn't want to play this position for white because I see a deficit of a pawn, and black now wants to eliminate white's only pride, dark square bishop, so bishop practically has to move. And then if we go simply queen d8, there is no easy access for white to black's dark squares on the king side. So what we can do, maybe we can go knight c7, d6, bishop e6, and I think black's position is very solid, and I think white does not have full compensation for a deficit of a central pawn. That's my opinion. I believe in it, and that's another food for your brain. So I would recommend to go. This is one answer on the question what to do in that position.
Grandmaster Damian Lemos here for onlinechesslessons.net. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, the 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from onlinechesslessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending, and growth hacks to improving your chess without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damian for onlinechesslessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.